Hey, what's up guys? It's Foster from SubiSpeed, and I've been highly anticipating today because we've got the STI back on the dyno, and we're gonna find out what type of power it makes. If you guys haven't been following the build series, I'd recommend you go back and rewatch all those videos where I install some bolt-on modifications to this car. But that's essentially it, guys. There's no custom fabrication. This is a really simple build, so you could easily replicate this yourself at home. It's nice and cool out as well today. It's in the mid 40s, and Graham's putting this thing on a full 85 tune, so fingers crossed we make some good power. So I know you guys are probably stubborn and you didn't go back and rewatch all those build series, so I'll quickly run over some of the most important mods that we have on the STI. We've got pretty much the full Cobb catalog, including their fuel system. You might see their flex fuel kit in the engine bay, but we're not running the flex fuel kit today. We're gonna do a full E85 tune. And then of course, when Cobb supports flex fuel tunes again, we'll come back and we'll get the STI updated. We've also got a ton of Grimmspeed parts on here, including their new JB400 turbo, their bigger top mount intercooler, downpipe, bypass valve, boost control solenoid. So there's a ton of parts that should support making some good power today. We've got a Mishimoto intake on here. And that's really it. We haven't done anything too crazy to the STI, so I'm hoping that this is the recipe for some good power.
So I started with just an E85 fuel base map, since we can't do flex fuel on these cars anymore. We've got E85 to start with. So full tank of E85, you guys got it nearby to come and go. I know that they have theirs at about 60–65%, so I kind of know where I'm starting from there. So I have everything set up for that. Everything else scaled in for the modifications you guys have done, and generally on a anything that's bigger than a stock turbo like this, my first run, like we did here, is always going to be just at spring pressure. What that means is I don't ask for any boost control. I just see what the boost makes on its own first and kind of go from there. So you can see on our first run there, we're pretty rich on the fuel. For E85, I'm down, in the mid 10s for AFR, and that's very rich for ethanol. Typically middle 11s is where I want to be. So one of the next things I'm going to do is, adjust the fueling to get that leaned back out as I add some boost pressure.
So we just did our third dyno pull, and we've been creeping our way up in terms of how much power the STI makes. It started out at 312, which isn't that much, but it was at 14 PSI. Now we're finally at 20 PSI, and we've cracked 370 wheel horsepower, which is honestly pretty good. I still would like to see it make 400. We're getting really close, so let's get a couple more pulls going and we'll see what Graham can do.
All right, so we've been working the boost up slowly from the starting point of about 14–15 PSI. Haven't worked with ignition timing at all yet. I like the curve that it's on right now. I feel like it's probably pretty close, but we'll do a couple verification runs here at the end to kind of see if it, wants more or less in certain areas. But based on my experience of doing thousands of these cars, it should be pretty close. We're kind of at a point where we're maxed on boost control, but we'll kind of play with timing a little bit and see if we can pick up any more power. chasing a number is never a good idea on the dyno, you know, unless you really know what you're getting yourself into. Typically when I'm tuning, I could care less about the numbers as long as they're in the ballpark. I'm not gonna chase 5 or 10 horsepower. I'm gonna tune the car to where it makes really efficient power. And so if you were a regular customer today, I would say, you know, we're there, this is it. You know, I'm not gonna keep trying to cram more boost into it or push it really hard to try to get you your 400. I'm gonna give you 389 and tell you, hey, this will last. But since we're here, you know, with your guys' car and, you know, in the name of science, we're gonna lean on this thing a little bit. We've got a built motor in there, so that helps. And we're gonna see what it can do. We're gonna see if we can get to that 400, or we're really gonna find out what is the max possible power that we can make.
So as you heard, we're pretty much there in terms of where we should leave the STI for street use, but we came here to try and get that 400 wheel horsepower, so let's send it.
Now, what we did there, so like I said, we were maxed out on the boost and the fueling. I did go a little bit leaner on the fueling, not to an unsafe spot, something that I wouldn't run on the street or on the track, but I might run for like a drag pass, you know, that kind of a fuel target. So we went to a bit leaner fuel target to look for a bit more power. And then it was just kind of working with the ignition timing, primarily after peak torque. I really didn't want to give it a lot more there. But it did take some more timing, and it took a leaner fuel curve, and we did pick up, you know, 15 horsepower or so from where we were at. The benefit of a journal bearing turbo is they tend to be a little bit less expensive to buy, for one, and actually, you know, size for size, sometimes we'll see a bit better spool up, meaning that if you're starting a pull from well under where the turbo wants to make boost, it will come into boost a little bit quicker with a journal bearing. Now that seems a little counterintuitive because you would think that ball bearing might spool up quicker, but journal bearing, since it actually kind of creates a little bit of a resistance, it creates a bit more back pressure sooner, and that causes the turbo to basically hit the point where it can spool quicker. Ball bearings are rotating so efficiently, they don't really have that effect. The benefit of a ball bearing is once you're well above the RPM where the turbo can make boost, what they call transient response, where if you're off the throttle and then back on the throttle at that point, say between shifts or on the road course, a ball bearing will come back into boost much quicker than a journal bearing. That's the benefit.
So we've got the STI back at the shop after our dyno session yesterday, and I wanted to take a minute to run over the power numbers as well as talk a little bit more about that JB400 turbo. In terms of power, I'd say the STI was a success. These bolt-on parts really did make some good power, and I was pleased to see that the top mount intercooler from Grimmspeed as well as that JB400 turbo really kept the response of the STI. We didn't sacrifice very much spool compared to the stock turbo. Another thing that was nice to see is compared to the stock turbo, the JB400 had a really nice top end. It made power all the way to redline, so that was great to see, and that's gonna make that power band a lot more usable. So could you make more power with this setup? Well, of course you probably could with some better fuel. In Iowa, we're starting to have the winter blend of our E85s. So I do think with some better fueling, you could make a little bit more power. But honestly, I don't think you really would want much more power for the street. This is a pretty ideal setup. You don't sacrifice anything, and it's just gonna make more usable power everywhere. And there's a lot more to how a car feels than just the peak power numbers. There's a ton of usable power in that mid-range, which makes this setup really nice. So hopefully we answered the question of how much power you can make with these mods. And if you want to see Kevin and I take the STI out and do some pulls, let me know in the comments section down below. I'd be happy to make that happen. And if you guys want to find any of these parts on our website, I will put links in the description down below as well. With all that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.